So
happy Monday. Welcome, Chris. It's good to have you back on the show. It's been a while.
It has indeed. It has indeed. It's where it all began, where the magic started.
Yeah, the trolling really kicked things off.
And here we are. Second time we've done a podcast with you, actually, from this sauna that we're in.
Yeah.
It's the phone booth at your office. So
yeah, it's been busy up until There's been a lot of work going on in this room before we got in it, so it's a little bit hot.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of minds calculating, needing extra cooling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So what's on your mind these days, Chris?
Oh well, there's lots, but let's focus on what I can share live.
Yeah. No confidential information.
I think that when Joe asked about this, and it's something that I've had a few conversations really. I was at the Ethan's meetup last week. I was chatting to a couple of people after that and discussing where I saw the evolution of, let's say, Snowflake or cloud platforms. First of all, we had data gravity. So we started saying, okay, we need to move more and more of this data to a central location. And if that gives you the ability to report across or provide other use cases that you wouldn't have been able to do before, or it wouldn't have been as real time because you've got silos of data. And I think the move from both Databricks and Snowflake was that now will allow you to access data that isn't there, so isn't actually within our platform, but is accessible by a platform with things like Iceberg or Delta Lake or Delta Tables. So we've solved that platform gravity or data gravity piece is being pretty much solved now, because you can get all your data into the same place. The next level of maturity or evolution is, and this has already started happening, and I'll use Snowflake as the example, is it does Docker containers. You're able to run your algorithms within the platform. So moving on from what referred to as data gravity before, we now have platform gravity. So we're putting more and more stuff to where the data, the core piece, now we're building other wrappers around it, but it's in the same platform. So where do I see that going further forward? I see that just extending even more. The likes of, right, I'm seeing sort of comments. Is it the like, with Salesforce having zero copy or zero ETL data sharing capabilities? And it's only a matter of time until they add other domains there. So CRMs are there. It'll be an ERP soon. Maybe it'll be a Shopify equivalent. As soon as they've tipped over that you've got all your core domains can actually run from that same platform, you're now at a stage where I'm hoping it will start encouraging the projects to not be seen as a data project or an IT project. It's now, this is our platform. It's a shared platform that services our business. Data is one element. The operation system is one element as well. So you've got this change now where it's a single deployment process. It's a single platform that people are using. There's more accountability now on the accuracy of the data in those source systems, because you're now working the same team as the people that are going to be consuming that data. So I think there's a lot of good that come out there. I think technology still needs to move a bit further to fully support it. But I do see that I see that's the next level of gravity. I'm not sure what else we'll start bringing into it more over time, but that seems to be the natural evolution, I think, of platform architecture.
Is it like a black hole?
Well, I suppose you could call it a monolith.
You can't get out of it. It's kind of like a black hole. Yeah,
and that's a really good point. Is that stickability or portability, and how wedded are you to that particular vendor that's supplying you that? And with that good architecture, patterns, you always want to be able to have the ability to move across to something else. In reality, there's a trade-off for that. You can provide that mix and match approach, but you're going to lose some benefits of having it in a single place. And using things like Kubernetes or containerization, you could run that load outside. It doesn't have to be run within the platform now. But if you do run it in the platform, there is some advantages of that being co-located and co-managed by your team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is the cloud vendor's entire play for the last over a decade, right? AWS's play was to get startups on AWS early. Once they were on that platform, it was much less attractive to move workloads elsewhere because they knew the platform, they understood how it worked, and it was very easy to move data around. And I agree with you, Chris. I think the major data-specific vendors are going to play the same game and probably expand into the cloud vendors' territory eventually. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
If I look at this on the pendulum of unbundling, bundling, microservices, monoliths, all that fun stuff we've seen before, I suppose this is just the evolution of where things are going, right? So I mean, this is especially acute when I think it was remember when Snowflake was rebranding as a data cloud, and they got a bit upset when people would call them a data warehouse. I think
we might know something about that.
We might have had that argument on our podcast at one point. With people getting on there and dogfighting in the comments, but that's just the percept. That's how they want to be perceived, right? So I can't speak for them as a company, but that's, from the outside looking in, that's they don't want to be attached to a specific technology. It's more like this is the data cloud, and you see this happening with all the other platforms out there too, right? Fabric and Azure, AWS doing whatever they're doing, Google. All of them, right? Databricks is the big five we talk about. But yeah, there's a gravity that exists there. But it's you talk about workload gravity back in the early days of AWS. That's so how many companies have we worked with where they were on AWS because they had a large number of developers on there, and then they had to build their data stack on AWS, right?
Oh, that's what we encounter. Like most of the time, we occasionally encounter Google Cloud or Azure, but most of the time it's AWS. And that's usually because developers started working on it, even on independent projects. And then it became the default eventually for the whole company. Like it was kind of a land and expand thing. They got into that company, they started running workloads there. And then the word was passed down from on high. Okay, everything we're going to do now is on AWS because we don't want to manage two clouds.
That's all the time.
And I see that happening a lot more with how the vendors are selling out to the organization. So Microsoft, for example, it's still being sold at the top, being promised to do everything, buy with us, we'll be able to give you every single component you ever need. Reality is, maybe they would, but is it the best components? But unfortunately, the architects, engineers, this has been taken away from them. You've already been told, by the way, you're going full Microsoft now, that's it. So, there's downsides. There's downsides to that approach, but from a managerial sort of perspective, especially when there's maybe a large transformation, the management, they're happy. Like, good, we've got that one tick. I don't have to have 5 different tenders coming out for different vendors in the pricing of them and RFPs. You've gone all in with a large vendor.
Well, think about that with Azure though. That's especially acute because they typically their go-to-market strategy with the customer is to bundle Office.
Yep.
Right, and pretty much give you a sweet deal on all the other Microsoft suites. So
Windows licenses for your laptops. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. And then the other thing that they'll do is they'll throw in a bunch of goodies, and then Fabric, if it's a competition for that, and Snowflake, for example, we've seen this happen, or maybe another vendor, which we've all seen happen. But it's like Azure's going to push their stuff all day, and they'll bundle in licensing for other products because that's their they have a lot of power in that situation. So it's, and if you're an IT person making the decision, you're like, yeah, but I can get all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a compelling buy.
Yeah, it is, and it's happening on I've seen it with some large clients of ours that before we even turned up, they've already told us what technology you're using. Okay, so now our role is to actually show you how to use your technology in the best way, rather than what's the best approach for your requirements. I've seen a couple of comments here from like John and Val.
The question, this one here, you want to look at that one?
Let's go.
Right. So this kind of sparked up a debate here. So, is data gravity similar to data centricity? I don't understand. What's data centricity?
Well, I suppose it's centralization of data. If that is the case, then
or it's like heliocentricity. I don't know.
John, maybe you can post a follow-up and we'll try to respond to that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to infer what he means by data
Yeah.
centricity.
But I think it was John's one.
Which
the
one?
mono platform. That first one. There's a couple. So yeah, we are in danger. Microsoft example, Azure example. Yeah, you've got a mono platform there. Yeah, the SAP equivalent.
So how you get mono? Of a mono platform?
Oh,
that's
no,
a dad
no,
joke. Sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, SAP is an example, or Oracle back in the day, or
Is it SAP or SAP?
oh, I said, well, SAP, SAP, it's Elite or LEIT.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, we are in danger of that. I think the key thing to, even though I'm talking about this platform gravity, I'm not talking about just stick it all in there without any architecture, what's doing which part of the capabilities. I still think you need to have defined capabilities that live within that platform. So here is our ingest framework that's living in that platform. Here is our orchestration framework living in that platform. Here is our transformation work. So it's, even though it's all running on that platform, you have been able to break it up. So for example, you ingest at some point, maybe you would want to go and use an external capability for that rather than just using the native capability. So as long as you'll know that, rather than knowing what part of the platform you're swapping out or swapping in, I think you can still design it in a modular, componentized way, but all sitting on the same platform.
Well, I think he points out an interesting one with SAP, because I would say out of all the quote platforms out there, SAP may have some of the highest platform gravity in the world. You try getting off of it.
Yeah, true.
Right. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. Even if it is brittle and so forth, and old school and inscrutable and all the other stuff, because a lot of it's written in Germany in the 1980s. I mean, good luck getting off of it once you're in. Right. Do you see anything else? So Dave McComb, or sorry.
Oh, very cool.
This for some reason. Okay, yeah. So Dave's
coming up on
idea
my
of
side.
opposite. Yeah, similar to write once, use anywhere. Yeah, I think it's a good notion. I've yet to see this play out in practice. I think maybe open table formats might be the way to do it, but it's a nice ideal. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, and it leads on to something I was going to be talking about, which is the technology limitations that means we do things how we do them now, right? We copy data around, we remodel it because we have to go and get it in a structure that satisfies the requirement it's being used for. And that's it depends how far you go back. We've made a lot of these architectural decisions based on the speed, the processing capability, the structure, the block sizes of that data to make it satisfy any non-functional requirements you've got, or to deliver again what the business need. If you move away from that and say we solve that technology problem, a few years in the future or whatever. So HTAP databases, we talked about for a while. Unitable, Unistore, Snowflake. I talked about 2 or 3 years ago. There's something CedarDB is one I looked at the other day as well. So there's a lot. It's moving forward. I think that's something that will address some of that write once, read many times. If you're able to store data in a way that satisfies the OLTP requirements, but is also able to have a view of that data, and underneath the bonnet, there's certain things you could probably do. That means that it can be used for operational reporting as well as the transactional persistence of that data.
How's it different from federation?
Your federation, you've got you're federating that data. You're still just giving it access to where that data is. The data is still duplicated because you're just federating. It's an abstraction to where that data is. You're saying with what you mean by federation?
Well, yeah, something like what Trino would do, right? So the data's maybe from multiple places. I can sort it however I want.
Yeah.
Right. So,
but then
it's almost the opposite of the data gravity, but it is also, I think, it's sort of what you're describing.
Yeah, too. I suppose it's giving you access to wherever that data is, but you still may have multiple copies of that data. So you may have one that's aggregated and one that's not aggregated, but you've got a federated layer to say where that data is. So one pane of glass for you to go into, and then it's dealing with where that data is persisted. I think where I was going with the HTAP, I'll give an example of a general ledger. Okay, so a general ledger, people do lots of postings to it, small little updates and things like that. We also want to do some analytics on that, to do year-on-year analysis or some trending, some forecasting. What you would probably do is you take that data out, put it somewhere else, model it to actually satisfy that. You've got a duplication of that data now. And if, say, for example, you put it onto a HTAP database, and behind the scenes, it dealt with that block size, it dealt with the information lifecycle management as soon as it is no longer being accessing its historical data, you can move it to block sizes that support that. You could even have a taxonomy that points to that data, and where it needs to materialize something, where it does need to go and create another copy of it, but virtual copy of it, it can satisfy that for doing analysis on your general ledger. So I think if technology solves the issue that it can deal with the difference between OLTP workloads and OLAP workloads in a single place, we've now removed the duplication of data that's happening quite a lot. Again, you've probably minimized the amount of ETL stuff you've had to go and do, and a lot of rework each time something changes, because you've got all your operational analytics happening on the same platform without any degradation of performance. And if I was to go back in the day, or an operational data store, so the concept of an ODS, that was to design really to give that intraday analysis of data without having it affecting your operational systems. And how you do that, you'd have a read replica, a hot cold version of your Oracle rack, and you would then go and put some, or direct any of the reporting stuff onto the side of that rack that is just a read-only one. The problem with that, it's still not structured in the best way for you to actually go and query that, but at least you're not affecting the actual transactional system now. So you're not slowing it down, but it's probably not reporting it in the same way that you would have if you actually physically moved it. But if as part of that infrastructure it's able to deal with, by the way, it's a read replica, but as part of that read replica, we're actually going to change the block sizes as well, and maybe even define the indexes or the metadata associated to it. So the access path or the query optimizer is going to query the read replica version of that in a way that suits analytics purpose. So I think that's that. I think if those technology problems weren't there, that would be a solution that would simplify the world that we live in at the moment. Anyway.
Well, and Chris, you use the term rework, and rework is actually a term that's very popular in manufacturing, and it's something you talk about a lot in Lean. Joe, maybe you can tell us a bit about that, because I've had some ideas for a long time about how a lot of what we do in ETL is kind of rework, to be honest. I mean, and you were alluding to that earlier as well, Chris.
Well, yeah,
as a supply chain guy, so I always throw the stuff to him.
Oh, rework's one of the cardinal sins. You don't want to do rework because it's extra work that shouldn't have happened in the first place. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know who I was talking to about this, but they brought up the notion that even data transformations and to some extent is rework. I guess I could agree with that to some degree, but I guess there's differences as well. Yeah, I don't know. ETL, I think in general is an interesting one. It's sort of this thing that we've lived with for a long time. But if you actually look at the nature of, okay, so you're going to make an equivalency to Lean, for example, the other ways that you're dealing with is batching your work and not having it in a continuous flow, which would advocate for streaming, right? But we do batch because it's convenient and because it doesn't really take that much time typically. I guess, if you're looking from a pure Lean lens, batch actually is another form of waste. Mm-hmm. So there's that second note. But as it pertains to the platform gravity discussion, I think that there's much interesting stuff. But before I go into that, Matt, what are your thoughts on rework?
Well, so going back to what you said, Joe, I think there are differences between ETL and rework, but I think some of ETL is just like maybe necessary transformations to get data into the right shape for data warehousing. But in many cases, you're fixing quality issues that ideally would be fixed at the source. And I think part of this is just a fact of history. So relational databases were kind of arrived for operations before we got into data warehousing. Therefore, teams working on operations got in the habit of just making data that was good enough for the things they needed to do day to day. And then the data warehouse was just treated as a downstream consumer. And there wasn't a lot of communication to say, hey, we're having to fix this quality issue. Can we fix that at the source instead? And I think that's something all of us would like to see a lot more of, just more integration between the operational side and the analytic side. And that's, Chris, you were alluding to exactly the same thing, I think.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think there's a lot of operational reporting that we go and build in the warehouse, and is that the right place for it to be in? And there may be some reasons historically why it's been done there.
What was being done there?
The operational reporting, so intraday reporting. So
I thought it was a good substitute. I mean, the data warehouse came about because people kept pegging the production databases back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I think, it was just a realization that, well, why don't you just offload that? But you got to understand, this is a very controversial idea at the time too. It wasn't like everyone's like, wow, let's do that.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill caught hell for this idea for years. So
yeah, but I suppose when data warehousing all came about, a lot of the source systems were on mainframes and
that's just it.
Yeah. So you had to offload it anyway to go and get any sort of way of reporting on it. Okay, if you fast forward now to where we are with the current most current companies and what they've already got, I'll go through like a standard e-commerce business. They're going to have Salesforce. They're going to have NetSuite. They're probably going to have Shopify. They'll probably have one other thing as well. Let's go the three rocks. They're all cloud services. They've already got a good data model that sits within each of those domains. In theory, you could still have your operational reporting could be served by each of those systems within their own domain. So CRM, you can say how many leads you've got, any sales forecasts, deals won, deals lost. It can all be satisfied from that. Your ERP is going to be able to tell you, or your NetSuite, he's going to be able to tell you your finance risk, your general ledger, and all the rest of it. So you can get a lot of the reporting off that. The Shopify piece, you can probably get a lot of reporting from that individually. It's where you need to start combining or cross domains, I'll probably call it. So your Shopify or your e-commerce platform is going to need customer information. It may mean it's a simple integration that you can do that it's got an API call back to that CRM system and actually bring that in. So you can still use it, probably do a lot of operational reporting or for certain things there. I think when you start getting into that multiple domains and you start crossing more than one, it's 3 different domains, then you are going to have to take all those 3 sources off. If it needs to be real-time intraday reporting, you have to do that streamed or replicated at a real time. I think that's, you don't hear people building stuff for that. They're always looking at that, the end use case, which is analytics sort of year-on-year sort of analysis. And the best foundation for this would actually be a nice ODS, or at least some of these metrics that would have been defined, or the taxonomy created for these things. Then they become the decent sources to actually go and perform any of the analytics on. And also the operational systems will now own the quality of that data. So anything we can do to encourage the people owning those source systems to actually make sure that the qualities of a level that's we need. Later on, we don't have to do all of these additional quality checks and then try and do a retrospective fix with some business rules there, which may not be as accurate as actually fixing it at the source thing. So I think if anything comes out of the approaches, it's just really ownership and getting a better understanding of ownership and the quality of all data that's actually collected by your operational systems.
Val has a good point here. He's bringing up something I think that we're not talking about, which is sort of edge computing and stuff too, right? Because I think we're talking about sort of the traditional world that's existed for years, which is we have your operational data store and operational systems and all this stuff. But I mean, the world's moved on from that too, or it's expanded from that, I would say, right? You have sensors out in the field, you got sensors with ML data or ML operations on it too. I mean, look at your phone. This is an edge device, technically.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the most ubiquitous IoT devices out there, right? It's constantly, for good and ill, collecting data about us. Yeah.
Yeah, there's billions sold a year. Yeah. I mean, think about that. This has multiple SQLite databases all over it. There's all kinds of stuff on it, right? But it's one of those things where you think about data quality. Okay, so it's not just, so is this the operational system now? Or which one is the operational system? Because I can make a pretty strong argument that this does contain a lot of operational data.
It probably does, but then if that app, that you put an app on the phone, that logic and the app that's on there should make sure that it has the right quality checks or input into it.
So
So maybe when you put the email address, make sure it is a valid email address. Simple things like that actually can be done within the app. And I suppose that comes to the same whether it's an app on your phone, whether it's a web system, whether it's any operational application. You still have that ability to put certain quality rules into the data capture aspect.
Oh, let's say with an app on your phone, it's a lot harder because you still have to go through like App Store and upload it and make sure your app, conforms to all of App Store. I mean, I used to do this stuff, and it's like that's just a complexity where it's like it's not just as simple as doing a Git push and pushing that directly to you. There's a lot of things behind the scenes. You can try and fake it though, I think, in the sense where you can have it behind the scenes making API calls, and they just change that.
Yeah, that's back end. Yep.
But there's some things you can't get away from, especially if you're trying to control the data quality being input, like you say, an email address, and it's like if you don't have that control on the form, on the Xcode, then you're kind of screwed. You're gonna have to fix it. So or just make a web app, I suppose, and just do it the old-fashioned way.
It's the app that then goes out to a web app on there. So you've got an app on your phone, it puts you out to the web.
Yeah. So that's I think there's a lot of, I think it's interesting because we're trying to talk about data platforms, but there's, like I said, there's a lot of things that change, and then I can make an argument like even OpenAI is becoming its own platform.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. I'm not thinking of, but that's also integrated into your other platforms. So maybe there's, I don't know, like this multiverse of different platforms that you're, and they're not just products, but they're platforms.
I think you've probably got two different classifications, haven't you? You've probably got your core business functions or capabilities. I keep going like CRM, ERP, e-commerce platforms, and then you've probably got the things that are very specific to your company that fills the gaps or provides any integrations between those systems, or your own special source as your own company. Adding those in, I think they're the areas that probably require the most focus of us as a data practitioners, because that's going to be the most likely sources of the worst data, because you would have thought that.
Looks like it's just me for a moment until Chris and Joe rejoin us. I think there are a lot of good comments here. I think what we're talking about to a large extent, and Chris was alluding to this as well, is the data quality issues that exist in most organizations that we know are fixable, and yet the incentives aren't there to fix them at the source. And so I think as we've worked in consulting, and Chris can probably attest to this as well, if you go into almost any organization, there are a bunch of data quality issues happening at the source that the team generating the data knows about and the team consuming the data knows about, and the incentives just aren't there to actually get those fixed. And so when we're talking about rework, those specifically are the targets of those kinds of improvements. I'm going to put Larry Blick's comment up here. So Larry says the value add will always be defined by what senior management has ascertained to be ROI per well-defined use case. Can 80% of enterprise artifacts only achieve this at any given point in time? Bear in mind, I'm at the end of the assembly line from an analytics perspective. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you definitely have to sell these initiatives to senior management. That's how it works. And that's often why things don't get fixed at the source, because there's no incentive to do so. But I think just as Lean sold this idea that you should eliminate rework in your assembly line to improve quality of products, you can make a similar pitch to management regarding data and explain how, okay, there's a short-term higher cost of labor to do this, and yet in the long term, there's a huge economy that comes out of it, and also just the huge benefit of having better quality data flowing through the pipes, basically, so that when you see reporting, it's just more accurate. I guess we'll see in a second if Chris and Joe are going to be rejoining us. Val Golding's comment is that data just becomes too hard to rework. Yeah, and it can be done, right? Like this is what ETL development teams spend a lot of time and effort on. But again, it's this false economy that you're somehow doing better by not fixing things at the head of the line in as much as possible. So either in the web app itself or in the back end, way before data flows into the pipes further down. Let me look through the other comments here. Yeah, this is a good one from John O'Gorman. Data-centric architecture would also mean the end of ETL, I think. Upstream integration. And I think I'll say that I think completely eliminating ETL is very hard. It's very hard to get out of the batch world, at least completely eliminate the batch world. But again, I think we could reduce a lot of the labor that goes into this right now. Yeah, sorry, Jason. We lost Joe and Chris. Jason's comment here was, so I'm just monologuing and I'm not used to this. So we'll see if they come back or not. Jason Taylor just tuned into a close-up of Matt because we lost Joe and Chris, and I'm not sure if they're coming back or not. So I wonder if I can bring, hold on just a sec. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, I think we may, let's see. Thank you, Val. Val says I'm doing great on the monologue here. Wonder if I can add one of you here. I know Joe has done this before. Does anyone feel like jumping on spontaneously now that we've lost our other two? Okay, I think, Jason, I'm going to try to get you on here just a second. Figuring out the technology as we go here. Someone says we can talk physics now. Sorry, the show is very much going off the rails today. Okay, so maybe we'll just extend deeper into the comments here. I'm curious. I'd love to hear more thoughts on this idea of two approaches. So one is this hybrid transactional application database idea. So you basically, or sorry, hybrid transactional analytics platform. So like HTAP, for example. And really the idea with this, I gave a talk about this idea at Data Council a little over a year ago. And if you're familiar with the CAP theorem, there are some limitations to any database, and you really can't have it all. You can't have something that's really good and scalable for analytics queries and also totally consistent. Because typically the idea with an HTAP type system is you really have multiple databases running behind the scenes, and some prioritize your transactions. Some are eventually consistent for really big reads if you need to do analytics type queries. Jason, welcome. Thanks for joining at the last minute here.
Hey, I have my wonderfully empty bookshelf right now because I am moving, but I figured I'd jump in. Ramona said that I should give you your award from the show that Chris and I had, which was that you were the most likely to say something very profound, albeit very quietly, because you have a tendency to whisper.
I do. I need to speak.
Sorry, I interrupted your.
Oh no, it's totally fine. So what I was getting at is that I think there are two big approaches to integrating your transactional systems and your analytics queries, and one is this HTAP idea. And Google has had this, frankly, for a long time. I think Snowflake is pushing some version of this, although I don't think it's totally mature yet. It's still kind of pre-release the last I checked. But it's the idea that really you have this interface, and in this interface, you can issue multiple types of queries. And there's kind of a transactional type query where the database behaves like a traditional OLAP system OLTP system. So you issue a query, it's very consistent. You're running transactions. You maintain consistency standards just like you do in Postgres. And then there's basically another interface where you can run massive queries. So I can run, query across the last 5 years of data, and it's going to return maybe in 30 seconds or a minute or something like this. And that interface typically is not fully consistent because behind the scenes, what's happening is you're streaming off of your transactional system, and then you're consuming that on the other end in a not totally consistent way. But your delay may only be a couple of seconds, which for a huge analytics query is totally fine. Okay, so that's one approach. But the nice thing is the user mostly doesn't have to worry about the details behind the scenes. They just know I can issue really big analytics queries, or I can issue transactional, like consistent type queries. And the other approach is just to stream directly, right? So take events and start relying less on state and more on an event-like approach. And both of these have some merits. I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, oh, look, hi.
Welcome back.
Hi, friend.
We brought on another guest. I wasn't sure if you were coming.
How's our internet?
You're a little
that's
fuzzy,
fine. And he's
but we can see you.
He has internet that works.
Yeah, exactly. We got 3 that don't work.
You're a little slow and laggy, but we can hear you. So, Matt, is this your example of eventual consistency right here? Is that Joe and Chris are kind of coming gradually up?
They eventually show up. Yeah.
I feel like my terribly cliche answer in this scenario is it depends, right? Because obviously there's some IoT oriented use cases, etc., like where you might need that sort of consistency as opposed to 1 to 2 seconds might be too much. I think that there are likely some analytics related to that which are also going to be problematic. I feel like IoT is probably in high frequency trading. I feel like some of those use cases are the ones that I immediately gravitate towards. I mean, HFT mostly just because of my background, but there's no good answer, right? Neither one of those things solves all problems, which is kind of the complicated part. I'd be curious, do you ever think we're going to get to a point where they're perfect? Oh, now we have 2 Joe and Chris's.
Just one, thanks. It's Chris forgot to pay the bill. Did you pay your internet bill this year? Okay.
we did. Yeah.
I did give you money. You should have enough money to pay for
Yeah,
it.
no, we don't. I don't pay things nowadays. I've got, yeah. If anything, I'll blame the CFO. But,
All right, I'm leaving. This is not my show. I'm dropping off. I'll go.
no, hang around, JT.
Hang around. This is fun. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
One of the last ones anyway. We'll be doing for a bit. So yeah.
Yeah.
So what did we miss? What did you solve while we were
Okay.
away?
So I've been talking about two approaches to the integration of analytics with transactional or operational systems. And one approach is just the pure event play. In other words, you actually try to get around using state databases like relational databases where you can, and you just send events. And your events can hit APIs, and the APIs will then forward those to streams where analytics can consume, right? But it's actually a very different application building paradigm that you have to get into to do this. It's like beyond, the traditional LAMP type stack, which variants of the LAMP stack are still what we use today. I mean, you may not be using PHP or MySQL, but you might be using Postgres and Python or something like that, right? And we've actually worked with clients on this, Joe and I, where it's like, well, but what if based on what you're doing, you're so event oriented, why don't we start working around the database where we can and just think in terms of events? The other approach is to use the LAMP type approach where you have a state database like Postgres, but then behind the scenes, this is the HTAP approach, Chris, basically, where behind the scenes you have another layer and really you're doing change data capture into an analytics layer. It's gotten to the point now where this is basically a seamless process where users don't have to know about this. You can go to Google BigQuery. They have an option like this. You can query, run analytics in real time on your application database. It's not actually hitting the application database because you have multiple layers. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's there's a few ways of skinning the cat, I suppose, on that one. And I think the other.
Watching the show.
It's an old, probably British expression. Many ways skinning the cat. No cats were harmed in the making of that comment. I think there's. Yeah, you can either perform that in situ stuff or putting it out onto a stream. When you were just saying that, what I was thinking is, putting it onto a Kafka stream, you can actually put enough on there that you can actually do intraday reporting off that stream, and maybe that the combination of that stream having the ability to do call outs to other master data while it's on that journey. Maybe that is the approach of doing the operational reporting before it's even persisted. I suppose it is still persisted underneath the bonnet in Kafka, but it's in transit, so to speak, but just a long journey.
Is there any sequencing kind of issues that we have to take into consideration with that, especially with respect to streaming, right? In terms of
because you need to make sure that if you're streaming operational transactional data, that any of the keys, the values have already been persisted before you start streaming that. So you wouldn't be able to do lookups on account code, CRM system, customer information or party information unless you've made sure you don't have that referential integrity anymore. You need to make sure that the timing thing is actually going to make sure that it's solving that problem for you. Otherwise, that reporting off that stream is going to drop records because you haven't got the associated master data that it requires.
But even I'm thinking like if especially if you think about some transactions that are dependent on prior ones, right? Like if they're autoregressive of some nature, right? So that way I need to have them come in sequence, right? And I know not like some systems are designed this way and not all of them are, right? Some of them it's just whenever it comes in and great, cool, neat.
It's. I'm going to use yours. It depends.
It's such a cop out, but it's true.
it is, but I think understanding your business processes, understanding what attributes are needed to support those business processes, the timeliness, the availability, and the accuracy of those attributes that need for that business process. Then after that, if you've got a problem or not. So it's until you've actually done that business process mapping to actually understand what you actually need to deliver the outcome, and would you have a timeliness issue for that? I mean, the thing I'm thinking of that I definitely did have this problem before was where you had multi-region, multi-continent operational system. It was a booking system in that case. So in that case, I would never be able to be sure that I was going to get them in the sequence they'd actually happen because they were coming from different places.
Yeah.
And also they didn't put a proper timestamp on it as well with the with the time zone, because that made it a bit more problem. But
Isn't that everything in UTC, Chris? You don't just keep your time.
But you would have thought so. You would have thought so. You would have thought so.
Also, Ramona noted that after you guys dropped off, the view count doubled. So it's definitely not for me. It has to be for Matt solo doing his show, because it's definitely not because I joined randomly.
So,
Well, it was kind of like,
yeah.
It was like college radio there for a second. Sorry about that. I was like,
I actually was going to say something I probably shouldn't. I think you're the prepping person. Is that where there's a term for that, isn't there? JT?
Fluffer.
But anyway,
Fluffer is the term you're looking for.
Oh,
I love that.
I was going to say it. I was going to infer to it. But
No, it's fine. I'll say it. It's fine.
I'm going to put another comment up here. Is this? I'm not. Is
Thanks,
this
Matt.
Colleen maybe, or who? I'm not sure who's. It just says LinkedIn user for me, but
It used to be
100%.
JT's name actually. So
Okay.
Yeah, I changed it.
Ramona, she sometimes doesn't. Yeah, she's
Okay. But yeah, this comment says let's 100% HTAP. It's 2024. Let's assume we can do two things at once. If you're not limited by legacy hardware, you can optimize for both write rows OLTP and read columns OLAP. Of course, I'm biased because that's what the Vast DB does. And just to contextualize this, Vast and some other vendors, what they've gotten into is using really modern hardware and managing the hardware network themselves, and using a lot of SSD and memory, putting things very close together, and basically getting much, much closer to like absolute consistency, where you have high scale but very OLTP characteristics. And it's true, like one problem with relying on the cloud is you're relying on all these layers that make this a bit more difficult. Whereas if you get down to this really modern high performance hardware, then you can start to realize a new dream to some extent.
So I'm glad that came, because me, JT, and Ethan were actually at data driven the other day, and the guy did a presentation from Vast. It was, and I think they had a joke of saying, "Is it vast enough?" Was there sort of like, "Is it fast enough?" But I know. We laughed, but we had a few drinks for them.
You probably had an uproar laughter too.
Yeah. Oh, JT had it recorded. He had like a fake applause and that you could just press.
I don't have that with me right now.
The foghorn.
Yeah. But yeah. So the comment. Yes. Yeah. That comment, or the person that was made that comment, said was 100% right. If
Colleen.
It was Colleen Tartar.
Okay. Yeah, and that I know that's probably very it's vast enough, but it's probably very expensive enough as well. So it is, from what we were seeing, their clients are normally very large hedge funds and people that have got shed loads of data, but also the pockets to pay for that. So I think when the same content becomes widely available and other vendors are able to do that, then I think it is going to simplify the world we're in. The only reason we separate these two workloads because they work better on different workloads. If there's one platform that can supply both those workloads in the same place, why would we move it?
But then I talk to people like Bob Muglia, who knows a lot about databases, and he says that there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all database. So
this came up at Day-to-Day Texas too, when we were, I think a bunch of us maybe were together, and it came up between Kent, Veronica. There's a whole bunch of us sitting together asked this question, and there are people in this camp hardcore that don't ever think this is going to happen.
Malcolm the Hawk.
Hawker.
Yeah, it's Malcolm Hawker, myself, and myself, Veronica. We didn't agree on the table, around the table of whether the two worlds should come together. I believe it can. I think Vast have done it. Technically, it can be done. How good it's going to be to comparing it to, I suppose you can make, it's like having a Ferrari and a
Ford F-150.
Yeah, and then you've got both of them. They're going to be the best at what they do. That pickup truck is going to put whatever you need in there. You're not going to break any laws on the speeding on it, and the other way around is you're not going to pack much shopping in your Ferrari. So they're both the best at what they do. But for the majority of people, they can go and get maybe a BMW mid-range that can satisfy both those requirements. They don't need to pick up.
That's definitely the average person's car for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Jaguar. All right, Jaguar instead. All right. Or Mercedes.
They're all average people cars.
So we're talking about plebe databases. So what's the average person's database?
Postgres.
Oh, at the moment, SQL Server is the average person database.
I think it's Postgres.
Oracle used to be a bit more. That was a premium one, and then if you're poor, you'd use Sybase or something like that.
Yeah, and I think Colleen has a good point. There'll probably never be a single database to rule them all, but every time you simplify the pipeline from data production to value creation, you reduce the total cost of ownership, aka TCO, and reduce the return on investment, or ROI, for data, which is winning.
All we need is the word business value in there as well, and you've got all of the buzzwords.
But she's right, though. I mean, if you reduce that total cost of ownership, I think it's a good thing.
Click here to buy Vast.
Click here to buy, or you can buy an 18-wheeler versus a Ferrari. Or I think in this case, your 18-wheeler could carry a bunch of Ferraris in it.
And Lamborghinis do tractors. So, yeah.
Jesus. Can the internet break again?
We're going to break the internet. Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally right. I think fundamentally what we're doing here is just making things more accessible. And that has been the advantage of the cloud, right? Like, we've known how to do this kind of hybrid HTAP thing for at least a decade and probably longer than that. It's just that you had to have a big engineering team to like stand up, your Postgres database, CDC, Kafka, Hadoop, like this whole, chain of different parts. And now it's turnkey. It might cost some money, but you save on the labor side and on the operational side, where you'd have to have people on call to fix this crazy machine that breaks all the time.
How do you think about, I mean, we're talking about, OLAP, OLTP, like how does vector enter into this?
Well, let's bring up John Cook's comment too on that. We're talking about relational. What about others? Graph, vector, document, right? So
Graph's having a whole heyday again right now. So
that's another show.
Cool.
That's a different show. That one.
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah, are you going to have a one size fits all for all of those ones? I mean, you key pair database. Maybe that could be done in the same ones, but maybe vector and document, maybe not. But it's if there's a possibility of consolidation of the technologies that then allows simplification for what we're building, why wouldn't you do it? It's going to be the what do you call it? A no-brainer.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what was the relational AI is doing, right? So I mean, they're taking the notion of document stores, but providing sort of the relational basically interface to it. Not interface, but it's the ability to basically treat documents like relational. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I think those that are fun. I wanted to. Anyway, but yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and it's also, I think we're kind of ignoring. We're not talking really about machine learning integrations either, or the AI. He mentions vector and so forth, but and graphs sort of converging all that. But so you're seeing kind of a tale of two worlds. Like, we're still arguing about sort of like the World War I legacy data stack, and we're entering a completely different world.
Yeah.
So
it's a different era. I think let's put John's comment up here as well. I think I agree. I think the convergence. So, as with everything we do, the technology part is very easy for us to solve. Yeah, I agree. It is more likely to be solved. I think the challenging part is, even if we had that technology there, we've got to get people on board. All right. So you've got to pivot away from how you're doing before. Oh, why did you do it? Well, we always used to do like that. Why do we change? And to build or take people on that journey of saying, yes, let's challenge why we did it before. Are all the assumptions we made and reasons to make that decision, are they all valid now? Okay, right, let's try that different approach. So I think getting people on board and buying into it, the ways of working and the even team structure, your organization structure is not going to support this like evolution, because you've still got your CDO looking after stuff, you've got your CTO looking after separate things. Those two worlds come together then.
Is that like a reverse Conway's a little bit there you're articulating? Like we're not, it's not Conway's anymore, we're going the opposite direction?
Yeah, and we've touched on this a few times, JT, about the comment. I think, as we always said, that your system reflects, your organization structure, but that's when they were built. Because systems don't change very often, and we're able to keep them up to date. The org structure moves much quicker, and that changes quicker than we can actually keep the systems aligned to your org structure.
Does it?
I think so.
I think no. It's a good point. Depends on industry. right? Because some industries like banking's uber slow at most things. But I think in most cases, org structure is logical in many ways, not physical, right? And we could probably argue that, but I mean, it's easier to change as opposed to changing systems, right? Like that takes a lot more.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. I suppose there's less friction in an organization changing, or is
It's just people. People change easily, right? Like just tell them, yeah.
And you're limited by laws and things like that of changing job titles, changing their role, and they may not want to do that. It's
speak for yourself and say.
Yeah.
oh yeah, sorry. We look after our staff here. We value them, and we don't just fire them by text, as I think you can in America.
Yep.
And give no notice at all. So,
Yep.
Yeah. So some things are better. Yeah. Not everything.
Not your internet, especially.
No, the internet's not.
It's not in the office today. Yeah.
You forgot to put the coins in the meter for it today, so it stopped working.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
how it
bright
works.
red. They were there writing a ticket when
They
you walked
booted the
outside.
router, so they couldn't use it. But yeah, it's something I jokingly called Reese's law, which is that your data model and everything will reflect the architecture of your organization. That ends up happening
I
inevitably.
agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to push back on the idea that organizational change is easy. I mean, yes, in principle, moving people around should be easy, but often with
People are
like being stagnant at the top and just organizational momentum, it can take years to make organizational changes. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I mean, I'm having trouble why this is under a debate at this point. Like, everything we've seen, and again, maybe it's different. Maybe you guys have fast-moving organizations. Your organizations are very dynamically moving and stuff. But at least according to what Matt and I have seen countless times, it's like orgs are so hard to change. The supposition is you can actually just throw more technology at it, and that'll solve your problem.
Well, what kind of change are you talking about as well? I guess to qualify that a little bit.
So,
So,
I mean,
for example, go ahead.
He's going to explain it to you.
well, no,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to have a stab at it. I think where I'm coming from with that is mergers and acquisitions. All right? A lot of the large companies we've done stuff for, work for, they're not just one company. It's 3 companies or 4 companies that merge into one. And actually, some of them are like separating back off again. So that org structures changes imposed on someone, and it has to happen. And your systems are never going to reflect that org structure change because it's 4 different systems that are now in just one organization. So I think that's one aspect that I think where the organization no longer, the org moves or changes so much that it doesn't actually reflect the online systems because it's evolved over time by acquisitions or mergers.
Yeah, because I mean, I think part of it comes down to, good old-fashioned roles and responsibilities. Part of it is who you're reporting to. Unfortunately, much of the world just kind of operates on reporting lines. Political friction, yeah, I absolutely agree with John's point. Like political friction and just habits, process building. I mean, like I like pounding the people, process, tools, kind of phrase very often. But yeah, I think it's different. I mean, I've seen some big organizations. I won't name names or point fingers, but I've seen some big ones that have reorged like every year for the past couple years, like that. And it's not the whole company for context, but like some big chunks of it have reorged pretty frequently. That happens. It's not like it's that unrealistic.
It does. Also, on a more serious note, Larry says, I'm currently educating on how to read a chart on executive dashboards. I'm so sorry, dude.
That's unfair.
Yeah, that's
I like that term, cultural debt.
cultural debt.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
I like it.
That's huge. I mean, because cultural is largely, culture eats strategy for breakfast if we want to play that one, and then other than that, it's all based on good habits or bad habits for that matter.
I was talking with Alan Hullab about this too. He's a technologist that was at this Jay on the Beach conference in Spain. OG in the tech space for sure, but he's talking about sort of I think he tacked on to Conway's law, which was you also design your systems and your ways of communication according to the culture of your organization.
Yeah.
So that was a very interesting insight. And he said that Melvin Conway gave it the old Elvin stamp of approval. So I guess it's a good addition to it. But yeah, it's interesting. Cultural debt. It's actually, I was literally just writing about this because the next chapter of my book is going to be out maybe as soon as tomorrow. But I was talking about there's a last section of a chapter called No Free Lunch. We're just talking about basically the trade-offs you need to evaluate, right? And one of them is how much organizational debt do you want to incur based upon your activities? Because if you're moving, so I was talking about, okay, you can move fast and slow with data modeling, which is great. If you move fast, you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. But if you go too slow, even though you might have a rigorous, meticulous looking data model, perfect in every structural sense, you would have lost the organization's willpower to keep supporting you because you're moving too slow. At that point, it's like, well, you spent years in this beautiful shrine to your data, and we have not got any value out of it in the meantime.
Well, it's a balance, right? Because if you move too fast and you make too many changes, then you're going to tire everybody out, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. So it is a balance for sure. You got to figure out that right cadence, because I think especially in places like jolly England and the EU where things move a bit slower. It's true. I've seen better. If you tried to move at that pace in America, your team would be canned. I wager to guess.
The subway in New York, that sort of speed. That's the
Or the Ferrari, whatever. Yeah, but it's like, yeah. I know we're past time here, by the way. So yeah, thanks for coming on, JT.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me, bailing me out. This was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if my inclusion is bailing you out, but I was happy to suffer with you. But the view count went up again. Like I don't know what you were doing right.
Yeah. I'll have to have you back on. Oh, Rob brings up a good point here too. By the way, Rob's supposed to be on the show next week. Got to figure this out because it's also Labor Day or Memorial Day. Sorry.
Right.
Opportunity cost is a huge cost in data world. Time to market. It absolutely is.
Yeah. And the example I'd use here is when COVID-19 happened, businesses that couldn't adjust their model quickly, like they suffered, right? If you couldn't quickly pivot to what people needed during the lockdowns, then you didn't do well. But if you could pivot quickly and say, hey, all of a sudden people need home delivery and they need streaming content, they need X, Y, and Z, then you did pretty well during that period. And some of that is organizational, some of it is leadership, but some of it is tech and data modeling and really basic things like that. Like you have to be able to evolve your applications to serve the users better to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for showing up, JT. We'll have you on the show more often now that you've proven yourself as a worthy co-host. Chris, we'll see. Yeah, and I think I alluded to this last week, but we're going to be taking the summer off from the Monday morning data chat. We got a few more guests. I believe Rob, Harmon, and a couple others on the show. Then we'll be back in the fall with a whole new lineup, and maybe we'll redo the format. I don't know. I don't know if there's a change, but we'll see.
Invite random people up. It'll be more interesting. Just catch people up.
Could be. Might help with the viewer count too, apparently. Yeah, it is interesting. But anyway, thanks for being on, dude. It was good to see you, GT. Matt, good to see you as always.
good to see.
I think I see Matt more on StreamYard than I do in person. So
That's probably correct.
Yeah. He's back in Salt Lake. I'll be back there supposedly this weekend, and then I'll be back stateside for a bit. Anything coming up that you guys want to announce? Any events that we'll be at? Anything you want to announce?
This week, Wednesday, so 22nd, there's the meetup, or London Low Key meetup at the normal place. So I come remember that. They're actually, so I think Sol will be joining with Joe, and there'll be some books there. So there'll be a little bit of book signing.
Books there.
So be sure to come down and take advantage of the situation. So
yeah, free books
and pizza and a couple of beers. It can't be bad.
Good spot, Q Bar. So I'll be there. Also at the Generative AI Summit this week, and then back. What's going on next week? I don't think anything. And then I'm supposedly making some appearances at Ethan Aaron's happy hour, Loki happy hour in San Francisco. So if you're around, come and say hi at that. There was something. The Mother Duck party going to be at that, and then doing something with Matillion as well the following day. So I'll be around. Then Anyway,
I'll be at the summit as well. So
there's a question. Your book, Chris. You gonna sign that too while you're there?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Work in progress. Work in progress.
That's JT probably. He's just being annoying
It's
again.
not me. I've unhidden my name. Not
Yeah,
me.
he serves up with Jason right now. So it's all good.
I decided to sell my data to the third parties. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, we don't do anything with it. Cool. Thanks for the audience for sticking around with us despite technical difficulties and I know a fourth wheel now on the show. So it all worked out. Yeah, but seriously, thanks, Jason. It was great having you on, and hope to have you on again. And Matt, thanks for taking over just seamlessly.
It wasn't entirely seamless. I was waiting and waiting. I'm like, is it just me or did they drop off?
Nope. I think you would.
All good. All right.
Yep. See y'all.
See you later. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.